The council chamber on Haven's Gate Station was enormous. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in circular rows, all facing the center where speakers stood to address the assembly. Today, the chamber buzzed with quiet conversations. Everyone knew why they were here. Earth had called for an emergency session. Ambassador Lisa Chen stood at the central podium, her hands resting on the smooth surface. She was young for a diplomat, barely 40 years old, but she carried herself with confidence. Her dark suit was simple, professional, without any decoration except for the small Earth insignia on her collar. She looked out at the sea of alien faces, some familiar, most still strange to her even after 2 years of diplomatic service. Members of the Galactic Council, Lisa began, her voice clear and steady. Thank you for gathering on such short notice. I stand before you today not to ask for favors or assistance, but to make a statement of fact. Earth has established a defensive perimeter around our solar system. We call it the Red Line. Any vessel approaching our system must identify itself and request permission to enter. Any hostile force that crosses this line will be met with immediate military response. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Some representatives nodded. Others exchanged glances. Lisa continued, "We are not making threats. We are not trying to isolate ourselves. We simply want to make clear that Earth will defend itself. We welcome peaceful contact. We welcome trade and friendship. But we will not allow our home to be threatened." From the upper tier, a loud laugh echoed through the chamber. Lisa turned her head to see War Prince Zalthor of the Crethean Empire standing in his delegation's box. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with dark red skin and 4 powerful arms. His armor gleamed under the chamber lights, covered in medals and battle honors. 2 of his officers stood behind him, their faces showing the same amused contempt. "Forgive my interruption," Zalthor said, though his tone suggested he was not sorry at all. "But I must say something. The human ambassador speaks of defensive lines and military responses. This is very amusing." He stepped forward to the edge of his box, looking down at Lisa. "The Crethean Empire has conquered 14 star systems. We have crushed civilizations that existed for thousands of years before your species even discovered fire. Our fleets have broken planets. Our armies have never known defeat. And you, ambassador of this young, weak species, you think you can draw a line and stop us?" More laughter came from the Crethean section. Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. She had expected this. Earth's intelligence services had warned her that the Cretheans were preparing to make a move into human space. This was their way of testing humanity's resolve in front of the whole galaxy. "War Prince Zalthor," Lisa said calmly, "I am not threatening your empire. I am simply stating Earth's position. If your vessels approach peacefully, they will be welcomed. If they approach with hostile intent and cross our defensive line, they will be engaged." Zalthor's laughter died. His face hardened. "Let me be clear, little human. The Crethean Empire goes where it wishes. We take what we want. Your line means nothing. If we decide to cross it, we will. And there is nothing you or your primitive fleet can do to stop us." The chamber fell silent. Every representative was watching now. This was more than a diplomatic exchange. This was a challenge made publicly before the entire galactic community. Lisa took a breath. She thought of the briefings she had received before leaving Earth, the military assessments, the strategic plans, the weapons systems that most of the galaxy did not know existed. She thought of Admiral Jack Morrison and his officers, preparing for exactly this moment. "Then I will say this clearly. War Prince, so there is no misunderstanding." Lisa's voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent chamber. "If you cross that line, if your ships enter our system with hostile intent, you will regret it. This is not a threat. This is a promise. We warned you. Remember that." Zalthor stared at her for a long moment, then laughed again. "We shall see, Ambassador. We shall see." The council session ended shortly after. Lisa walked back to her quarters, her assistant following quietly behind. She knew the recording of that exchange would be broadcast across the galaxy within hours. Earth had drawn a line. The Cretheans had rejected it publicly. Now everyone would watch to see what happened next. Far from Haven's Gate, at the edge of the Sol system near Jupiter, Captain Ben Hayes sat in the command chair of the patrol ship Guardian. His crew was small, just 20 people, but they were good at their job. The Guardian was not a warship. It was designed for long-range patrol, equipped with powerful sensors and fast engines. "Captain," Lieutenant Karen Foster called from the sensor station. I'm picking up multiple contacts at the edge of our detection range. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Ben leaned forward. How many? 5 ships. Medium size. They're holding position just outside the red line. Karen's fingers moved across her console. Running identification scan now. Captain, these are Krathian scout vessels. Ben felt his stomach tighten. Open a channel. All frequencies. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, sir. Attention, Krathian vessels. This is Captain Ben Hayes of the Earth Defense Force Ship Guardian. You are approaching a restricted military zone. State your purpose and intentions. For a moment, there was no response. Then a voice came through the speakers, speaking in heavily accented English. Human vessel. We are conducting routine survey operations. We have no hostile intentions. Ben glanced at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Greg Palmer, who shook his head slightly. The Krathian ships were not conducting surveys. Their sensors were active, scanning the Guardian, measuring its capabilities, recording everything. Krathian vessels, you are advised that the area beyond this point is restricted. If you wish to enter Sol system space, you must request formal permission through diplomatic channels and wait for authorization. Another pause. Then the Krathian voice replied, We acknowledge your statement, human captain, but the ships did not turn away. They held their position, sensors still active, clearly gathering intelligence. Ben watched them on his display. They were testing Earth's response, measuring how quickly patrol ships could arrive, checking weapon systems, recording communication protocols. They're mapping us, Greg said quietly. Building a tactical profile, Ben nodded. Send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them the Krathians are probing our defenses. Include all sensor data. He turned to his communications officer. Also send a message to those Krathian ships. Tell them they have 1 hour to move beyond our detection range or they will be considered hostile. The hour passed slowly. The Krathian ships remained exactly where they were for 58 minutes. Then, almost casually, they engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished. Ben sat back in his chair. Log everything. Timestamps, sensor readings, communication records, everything. He looked at his crew. This is just the beginning. They're coming. On Earth, in the underground headquarters of the Planetary Defense Initiative, Director Kate Sullivan reviewed the reports coming in from across the system. She was a small woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had spent 30 years in military intelligence before taking this position. She knew how to read the patterns, how to see what was coming before it arrived. The reports were clear. Krathian scout ships at Jupiter. Krathian diplomatic ships requesting tours of Earth facilities. Krathian trade vessels asking detailed questions about human industrial capacity. They were gathering information, preparing for something. Kate's assistant, a young officer named Lieutenant Danny Pierce, stood beside her desk. Director, the latest intelligence from our contacts on Haven's Gate confirms it. The Krathians are assembling a fleet at their forward base in the Krell system. Current estimates put it at 300 ships. Kate nodded slowly. 300? They're not taking any chances. They want to make an example of us. Ma'am, our current fleet strength is 57 combat-ready vessels. Even with the new weapon systems, the math doesn't look good. Kate looked up at him. The math never looks good when you fight fair. Fortunately, we don't plan to fight fair. She stood, walking to the large display on the wall that showed the Sol system. The red line glowed in bright crimson, marking the boundary Earth had established. We knew this was coming. We've been preparing for 5 years. Every weapon platform, every defense station, every minefield, every trick we could think of. The Krathians think they're fighting another primitive species. They think overwhelming force is enough. She turned to Danny. Send a message to Admiral Morrison. Tell him to implement Protocol Prometheus. And send a message to all our allies, the few we have. Tell them what's coming. They should know what happens when someone crosses our line. Danny saluted and left. Kate turned back to the display, looking at the glowing red boundary. She thought about the Krathian war prince laughing at Ambassador Chen. She thought about the scout ships testing their defenses. She thought about the fleet assembling in the darkness of space, preparing to crush humanity. We warned them, she said quietly to the empty room. We told them not to cross that line. They laughed. Now they're going to learn why you should listen when Earth gives a warning. In the Krell system at the Kreth. The alarm started at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Admiral Jack Morrison was already awake, sitting in his quarters aboard the battleship Valor, drinking coffee and reading intelligence reports. He had not been sleeping well for days. He knew something was coming. His communication panel chimed. "Admiral, this is the bridge. We have multiple contacts entering the system near Neptune. Sir, it's a lot of ships." Jack set down his coffee and stood. "I'm on my way. Sound general quarters. Get me a count as soon as you can." He walked quickly through the corridors of the Valor. Crew members rushed past him, heading to their battle stations. The ship hummed with energy as systems came online. Within 2 minutes, Jack stepped onto the bridge. His executive officer, Commander Sophie Grant, turned to face him. "Admiral, we count 297 ships. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel just beyond Neptune's orbit. They're in formation and advancing slowly toward the inner system." Jack moved to his command chair and sat down. The main display showed the Sol system with hundreds of red dots clustered near Neptune. Each dot was a Crethean warship. "Are they broadcasting?" "Yes, sir. On all frequencies. Playing it now." The voice that came through the speakers was War Prince Zalthor's. Jack had heard recordings of him before. "People of Earth. This is War Prince Zalthor of the Crethean Empire. Your ambassador made threats. She drew a line and told us not to cross it. We have crossed it. You have 24 hours to surrender your planet and your system to the Empire. If you do not, we will destroy every ship, every station, every city. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Surrender or die." The bridge was silent. Jack looked at his officers. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. He touched his console. "Open fleet-wide channel," Sophie nodded. "Channel open, sir. This is Admiral Morrison to all ships. You've heard the Crethean message. You know what's at stake. Every one of you volunteered for this duty. Every one of you knew this day might come. Today we find out if 5 years of preparation was enough. Today we defend our home. Morrison out." He closed the channel and opened another one. "Get me Captain Ben Hayes, Colonel Danny Pierce, Major Emma Cole, and Director Kate Sullivan. Conference call, Priority Alpha." Within minutes, 4 faces appeared on holographic displays around his chair. Ben Hayes was on the bridge of the Guardian, now positioned near Mars. Danny Pierce was in the command center on Mars itself, surrounded by tactical displays. Emma Cole appeared to be in the small cockpit of a stealth ship, alone in the darkness. Kate Sullivan was in the Defense Initiative headquarters on Earth. "Status reports," Jack said simply. Ben spoke first. "Guardian and the patrol squadron are in position. We've been tracking the Crethean fleet since they entered the system. They're being very casual about their approach. No scouts ahead, no rear guard, just a straight advance in tight formation." Danny was next. "Mars defense grid is fully operational. All mass drivers charged and ready. We have firing solutions on the enemy fleet. Just give the word." Emma's voice came through, quiet and calm as always. "I'm currently 800,000 kilometers behind the Crethean fleet. They have no idea I'm here. The stealth systems are working perfectly. I count 5 command ships in their formation. They're clustered in the center, probably where their leadership is located." Kate spoke last. "Earth's orbital platforms are ready. The gravity well generators are online. Protocol Prometheus is loaded and standing by for your command, Admiral." Jack nodded. "Good, here's what we're going to do." He began explaining the plan detail by detail. It was complex, requiring perfect timing and coordination, but it was also flexible, with backup options and contingencies. As he talked, he watched his officers' faces. They showed no fear, only focus. When he finished, Ben smiled slightly. "They're going to regret crossing that line." "Yes," Jack agreed. "Yes, they are. Execute Phase 1. Let's make them think they're winning." The Earth Defense Fleet began to pull back. It looked like a retreat. 57 human ships, small compared to the massive Crethean armada, turned and accelerated away from the advancing enemy. The formation looked ragged, almost panicked. On the Wrath of Empire, War Prince Zalthor watched the humans flee and laughed. "Look at them run. They talk so bravely, but when faced with real power, they show their true nature. They are cowards like all the species we have conquered." His tactical officer stood at attention. "War Prince, should we dispatch pursuit ships? We could catch their slower vessels." Zalthor waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "No, let them run to their planet. Let them huddle around their homeworld. We will destroy them all at once. It will be more satisfying that way." The Crethean fleet continued its advance. They moved past Uranus, then past Saturn. They were taking their time, Savoring their apparent victory, the human ships kept retreating, staying just ahead of the Creathians, leading them deeper into the system. Captain Ben Hayes watched his tactical display carefully. The Creathian fleet was exactly where they needed to be. All ships maintained current distance from the enemy. Keep them interested, but don't let them get too close. His communications officer called out. Sir, we're getting messages from the Creathian fleet. They're taunting us, calling us cowards and offering us one more chance to surrender. Ben smiled coldly. No response. Let them talk. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, concealed among millions of rocks and ice chunks, 30 weapons platforms waited in silence. They had been placed there over 3 years, disguised to look like ordinary asteroids. Each platform contained a gravity well generator, a piece of technology that humanity had developed specifically for system defense. When activated, these generators created localized distortions in space-time, making faster-than-light travel impossible in the affected area. Colonel Danny Pierce monitored the platforms from Mars. All units report ready. The Creathians are approaching the target zone. They'll be in range in 45 minutes. On Earth, in a bunker 2 miles underground, Director Kate Sullivan watched multiple displays showing every aspect of the battle space. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Morrison. Jack, one of the Council representatives, sent a message. The Vrex Confederation is offering to negotiate with the Creathians on our behalf. They're suggesting we accept terms while we still can. Jack's face on the screen showed no emotion. Send them our thanks, but decline. We don't need negotiators. What we need is for every species in the galaxy to understand that Earth means what it says. Kate smiled. I thought you'd say that. I already declined for you. The Creathian fleet reached Mars orbit. They slowed their advance, their sensors scanning the red planet and its 2 small moons. War Prince Zalthor looked at the tactical display with satisfaction. The human homeworld was just ahead. One more push and they would be there. War Prince, his sensor officer, reported. We detect approximately 60 human vessels near Earth. They appear to be in defensive formation around the planet. Also, there are numerous orbital structures. They may be defense platforms, Zalthor nodded. As expected. They gather everything they have for one last desperate stand. It will not be enough. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to the human fleet. Let me speak to their admiral. I want to offer him one final chance to surrender before we destroy him. The channel opened. Admiral Jack Morrison's face appeared on the main display. He looked calm, almost relaxed. Behind him, the bridge of the Valor showed crew members working at their stations. War Prince Zalthor, Jack said politely. Can I help you? Zalthor's eyes narrowed. This human showed no fear, no desperation. That annoyed him. Admiral Morrison, I am being generous. I offer you one last chance. Surrender now. Your people will be allowed to live as subjects of the Empire. Refuse and every human in this system dies. What is your answer? Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. War Prince, do you remember what my ambassador told you? She said if you crossed our line, you would regret it. She said we warned you. Do you remember that? Zalthor felt a flicker of unease but pushed it aside. Empty words from a weak species. You cannot threaten us. We have 300 warships. You have less than 60. The math is simple. You're right about one thing, Jack agreed. The math is simple. You brought 300 ships into our system. 300 ships that crossed the red line after we warned you. Every one of those ships is now trapped. And you're about to find out what happens when you ignore a warning from Earth. Jack's image vanished from the screen. Zalthor felt anger surge through him. Insolent human. All ships battle formation. Prepare to advance on Earth, we will crush them now. The Creathian fleet began to reform, tightening their formation for the final assault. That was when Admiral Morrison gave the order. Activate Protocol Prometheus. Across the Sol system, dozens of hidden systems came to life simultaneously. The gravity well generators in the asteroid belt activated first. Space itself rippled and twisted. On the Creathian ships, faster-than-light drives suddenly shut down. Alarms blared. Engineers rushed to their stations trying to understand why the drives were not responding. War Prince, the engineering officer shouted. We cannot engage faster-than-light travel. Something is interfering with the drive field. The orbital defense platforms around Earth revealed their true nature. What the Creathians had thought were simple defensive structures began to rotate, massive sections moving into position. Each platform was actually an enormous railgun, built over 5 years in secret, disguised as ordinary military stations. Major Sophie Grant stood in the command center of Platform 7, the largest of the orbital weapons. Around her, 20 crew members worked at their stations, monitoring power levels and targeting systems. The platform had been charging its capacitors for 3 days, storing enough electromagnetic energy to launch projectiles at speeds that conventional weapons could never achieve. "All platforms report ready," one of her officers called out. "Targeting solutions locked. We have clear firing lanes." Sophie opened a channel to Admiral Morrison. "Platform command to Valor. We are ready to fire on your order." Jack's voice came back immediately. "Fire at will, Major. Show them what Earth built." Sophie took a breath. "All platforms you are authorized to fire. Commence operation." The railguns fired in sequence. The recoil was so powerful that the entire platform shook, even though it was designed to absorb the force. Through the observation window, Sophie saw the projectiles streak away, glowing from the heat of their acceleration. They moved too fast for the human eye to track properly. One moment they were there, the next they were simply gone. The Crethean fleet saw them coming but could do nothing. Their point defense systems tried to lock on, but the projectiles were moving too fast. Their shields might have helped against energy weapons, but these were solid slugs of tungsten carbide alloy, each one weighing several tons and moving at a fraction of light speed. The impacts were devastating. When a railgun projectile hit a Crethean warship, it did not explode. It simply punched straight through, carrying so much kinetic energy that the ship's structure could not contain it. The entry hole was small. The exit hole was massive, as metal and interior components were ripped out in the projectile's wake. Some ships were hit multiple times. They came apart like toys, breaking into pieces that tumbled away into space. On the Wrath of Empire, War Prince Zalthor watched his fleet die. The tactical display showed ship after ship winking out, their status changing from active to destroyed. In less than 10 minutes, the Crethians had lost over 100 vessels. His 4 hands gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles pale with tension. "How many ships have we destroyed?" he demanded. His weapons officer looked up, his face showing the despair they all felt. 4 human ships confirmed destroyed, War Prince. Perhaps a dozen more damaged. But they keep moving. We cannot land solid hits. They are too fast, too maneuverable. Zalthor felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Fear. Real, cold fear. "All ships, full retreat. Break through their lines. Get out of this system any way you can." The Crethian ships tried to scatter. Some charged directly at the human vessels, hoping to force their way through. Others turned back toward the outer system, trying to reach open space where they might escape. But everywhere they turned, they found obstacles. Captain Ben Hayes watched the Crethean fleet try to break free. "All squadrons maintain containment. Don't let any ships get past us. Wounded animals are dangerous. Stay sharp." His squadron of 12 ships moved in coordination, their formation tight and disciplined. When a group of Crethean cruisers tried to punch through, Ben's ships concentrated their fire on the lead vessel, crippling it and forcing it to drift into the path of the ships behind it. The Cretheans scattered, crashed into each other, their coordination falling apart. Colonel Danny Pierce fired another barrage from the Mars defense grid. The mass drivers had cooled enough to fire again, launching fresh projectiles at the targets his computers selected. He chose the largest ships, the ones that looked like command vessels or carriers. Each one that died took dozens of smaller support ships with it, cutting off their coordination and supply. In the rear of the Crethian formation, Major Emma Cole's stealth squadron struck again. They had reloaded their missiles and moved into new positions while the enemy was distracted. Their targeting was precise. They aimed for engines and power cores, crippling ships rather than destroying them outright. A destroyed ship was just debris. A crippled ship blocked the movement of others, became an obstacle, created confusion. "Target the command ship," Emma ordered. "The big one in the center. All missiles on my mark. Fire." 16 missiles launched simultaneously, streaking toward the Wrath of Empire. Zalthor's crew saw them coming and diverted all power to rear shields. The first 4 missiles exploded against the shields, draining their power. The next 4 got through, impacting against the hull. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. The final 8 missiles hit the engine section. The Wrath of Empire lurched forward as its main engines died. Secondary explosions rippled through the engineering decks. The ship began to tumble slowly, out of control. "Damage report," Zalthor shouted. "Main engines offline. Power at 40%. Maneuvering thrusters only." "We are adrift, War Prince." Zalthor slammed one fist against his armrest. Around his ship, the fleet was dying. Some vessels tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas on all frequencies, but their communications were being jammed. No messages got through. The human ships continued their methodical destruction. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valor, watching the tactical display. The battle, if it could still be called that, had been going on for 6 hours. The Crethean fleet was down to fewer than 80 ships, and most of those were damaged. His own fleet had lost 9 vessels, with another 20 damaged. The math was brutal but clear. Earth was winning. "Admiral," Sophie's voice came through his earpiece. "Multiple enemy ships are attempting to surrender. They're shutting down weapons and shields. What are your orders?" Jack had thought about this moment during the planning stages. He knew that some enemy vessels would try to surrender. He knew that accepting surrender was the humane thing to do, the civilized thing. But he also knew that this battle was about more than just defeating an enemy fleet. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. "Tractor beam the escape pods and lifeboats," Jack ordered. "Take the crews prisoner. But the ships themselves are to be destroyed. Every single one. No Crethean vessel leaves this system intact." There was a brief pause before Sophie replied, "Understood, Admiral." Targeting surrendered vessels now. Some of Jack's bridge officers exchanged glances. They understood the order, but that did not make it easy. Commander Greg Palmer, the tactical officer, stepped closer to Jack's chair. "Sir," he said quietly, "some of those ships have already disarmed." "They're no threat," Jack looked at him. "This is not about eliminating threats, Commander. This is about showing the galaxy what happens when you cross Earth's red line. The Cretheans came here to make an example of us. Now we make an example of them." Greg nodded slowly and returned to his station. Around the battle space, human ships began targeting the surrendered Crethean vessels. It was methodical, efficient, without cruelty but also without mercy. One by one, the disarmed ships were destroyed. Railgun projectiles tore through hulls. Missiles found their targets. Within an hour, only debris remained. War Prince Zalthor sat in the command chair of his dying flagship, watching his fleet vanish on the tactical display. 300 ships had crossed the red line. Now fewer than 20 remained, and those were all damaged and adrift. His communications officer managed to get one message through the jamming. "War Prince, I have contact with the Crethean Empire Command. Fleet Admiral Vexnor is demanding a status report." Zalthor felt a bitter laugh build in his chest. Status report. What could he say? That humanity's warnings were not empty words? That Earth had turned its entire solar system into a trap? That the mighty Crethean fleet had been systematically destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive? "Tell the Admiral," Zalthor said slowly, "that we underestimated the humans. Tell him that their warnings were real. Tell him." An explosion rocked the wrath of Empire. The hull groaned. Emergency lights flickered. "We have been hit again," the damage control officer reported. "Hull breach on multiple decks. Life support failing. War Prince, we must abandon ship." Zalthor stood. Around him, his bridge crew looked to him for orders. Some were injured. All were exhausted. He had led them into this disaster. He had laughed at the human ambassador's warnings. He had brought 300 ships into this system believing victory was certain. "Evacuate the ship," he ordered. "All hands to escape pods." His officers moved quickly, helping the injured, opening emergency hatches. Within minutes, the bridge was empty except for Zalthor. He stood alone in the flickering emergency lights, looking at the dead displays and silent stations. A captain should go down with his ship. That was the tradition. But he was not just a captain. He was a prince of the Empire. His death here would serve no purpose. He walked to the escape pod, climbed inside, and sealed the hatch. The pod launched automatically, carrying him away from his flagship. Through the small window, he watched the wrath of Empire drift in the darkness. Then a railgun projectile hit it directly in the center, and the ship simply ceased to exist. The escape pod tumbled away in the debris field. Within minutes, 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Lisa Chen walked through the corridors of Haven's Gate Station. She noticed something different immediately. Representatives who had previously ignored her now stepped aside as she passed. Some nodded respectfully. Others simply stared. The casual dismissal she had experienced before was gone, replaced by something else. wariness, perhaps even fear. She entered the council chamber. It was packed, every seat filled. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to hear what Earth would say. Lisa walked to the central podium, her footsteps echoing in the silent room. She placed her hands on the smooth surface and looked out at the assembly. The Vrex representative, a tall being with blue skin and 3 eyes, stood first. His name was Counselor Vex, and he had been one of the first to offer Earth refuge when the Krethians threatened invasion. Now his voice carried confusion and something that might have been accusation. Ambassador Chen, the Council has received reports of the incident in the Sol system. We must ask directly. What happened to the Krethian fleet? Lisa met his gaze calmly. The Krethian fleet crossed our red line despite our warning. They entered our system with hostile intent. They threatened to destroy our planet and our people. We defended ourselves, but the entire fleet, Vex said, his voice rising. 300 warships. All destroyed. How is that possible? Your fleet was outnumbered 6-1. We did not rely on our fleet alone, Lisa replied. We prepared our entire system for defense. When the Krethians ignored our warning and crossed our boundary, they learned that Earth takes its promises seriously. Another representative stood. This was Ambassador Krell of the Sentinel Compact, a species that resembled large insects with multiple limbs. Their civilization was ancient, thousands of years old, and they prided themselves on their wisdom and experience. Ambassador Chen, Krell said carefully, the Sentinel Compact has studied the sensor data you provided. The tactics you employed, the weapon systems, the coordination. This was not a desperate defense. This was a carefully planned trap. You lured them in and destroyed them systematically. Lisa nodded. Yes, that is correct. But they tried to surrender, Krell continued. Multiple ships disarmed themselves and broadcast surrender requests. Yet you destroyed those ships anyway. Why? The chamber went completely silent. Every representative was listening now. This was the question they all wanted answered. Lisa took a breath before responding. Because this battle was not just about defending Earth from one fleet. It was about establishing a principle. We warned the Krethians. We told them clearly what would happen if they crossed our line with hostile intent. They laughed. They mocked us before this very council. They crossed our line anyway, intending to destroy our world and enslave our people. She paused, making sure everyone understood. If we had accepted their surrender halfway through the battle, if we had shown mercy when they realized they were losing, what message would that send? It would tell every aggressive power in the galaxy that they can threaten Earth, and if things go badly, they can simply surrender and face no real consequences. That is not acceptable. So you destroyed ships that were no longer a threat, Vex said slowly. You killed crews that were trying to give up. We rescued every escape pod and lifeboat, Lisa replied firmly. We have 8,000 Krethian prisoners in our custody, and they are being treated well. But the ships themselves, yes, we destroyed them all. Every single one. Because we wanted to make it absolutely clear. If you cross our line with hostile intent, there is no halfway measure. There is no backing out. You commit to that action fully and you face the consequences fully. The chamber erupted in voices. Some representatives shouted in outrage. Others argued in support. Lisa waited for the noise to die down. The council chairman, an elderly being from a neutral world, called for order. Ambassador Chen, the chairman said when quiet returned, the council must consider whether Earth's actions constitute a war crime. The destruction of vessels attempting to surrender may violate the conventions of civilized warfare. Lisa had prepared for this. Counselor, with respect, Earth is not a signatory to those conventions. We only joined the galactic community 2 years ago. We were not consulted when those rules were written, and more importantly, those conventions were created by civilizations that have not faced the threat of total extinction. We drew a line. We warned what would happen if that line was crossed. The Krethians chose to cross it. The consequences are on them, not us. She pulled up a holographic display, showing the recording of War Prince Zalthor's speech before the council. His laughter echoed through the chamber. His mocking words about crushing humanity played for everyone to hear. This is what we faced, Lisa said quietly. A power that intended to destroy us completely. They announced it publicly. They bragged about it. They gave us no choice but to fight with everything we had. And now that we have won, now that we have shown we can defend ourselves, the council questions our methods. She looked around the room. Where was the Council when the Crethians threatened us? Where were the defenders of civilized warfare when an empire announced its intention to commit genocide against humanity? You offered us sympathy. You offered to take in refugees, but not one of you stood with us. Not one of you said the Crethians were wrong to threaten an inhabited world. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, because Lisa was right and everyone knew it. The galactic community had been content to let Earth face destruction alone. Far from Haven's Gate, in the Crethian home system, Fleet Admiral Vexnor stood in the Imperial Palace, facing Emperor Thrak. The throne room was massive, designed to intimidate. The Emperor sat on a throne of black metal, his forearms resting on the armrests, his red skin darker than most Crethians, a sign of his noble bloodline. "Tell me again what happened," the Emperor said, his voice dangerously calm. Vexnor had served in the military for 40 years. He had never been afraid of speaking truth to power. "Majesty, the humans prepared a trap. They used their entire solar system as a weapons platform. Gravity wells prevented faster-than-light escape. Mass drivers provided long-range kinetic bombardment. Their fleet was designed for speed and coordination, not direct confrontation. They herded our ships into a kill box and destroyed them systematically." "War Prince Zalthor was a fool," the Emperor said flatly. "Yes, Majesty. He underestimated the humans completely. He thought overwhelming numbers would be enough. He did not scout properly. He did not adapt when the trap revealed itself. And he paid for those mistakes with his life and the lives of 200,000 of our warriors." The Emperor stood and walked to a large window overlooking the capital city. "The humans have made us look weak. Our subject worlds are restless. Reports come in daily of unrest, of calls for rebellion. They say if the humans can defeat us, perhaps they can too. Majesty, may I speak freely?" "You always do, Vexnor. That is why I keep you as my fleet admiral despite your lack of political sense. Speak." "The humans gave us a warning, a clear, specific warning. We ignored it. We laughed at them. We crossed their boundary with the intention of destroying them. They defended themselves and won. In the eyes of galactic law, they were within their rights. If we retaliate now, we will be seen as the aggressors. Our few remaining allies will abandon us." The Emperor turned, his 4 eyes glaring at the Admiral. "So you suggest we do nothing? We let this insult stand? I suggest we think carefully about our next move. The humans destroyed 300 ships with a fleet of 60. They have weapon systems we did not know existed. They have tactics we have never encountered. If we send another fleet and it also fails, the Empire will collapse. Our enemies will smell blood." A younger Crethian stepped forward from the shadows. This was Prince Corval, the Emperor's nephew, ambitious and aggressive. "Uncle, we cannot appear weak. Summon the Grand Fleet, 1,500 ships. That is half our entire military strength. Send them to Earth and crush the humans once and for all. Show the galaxy that the Crethian Empire cannot be defeated." Vexnor turned to the prince. "And if we lose the Grand Fleet? What then? The Empire will be defenseless. Every world we have conquered will rebel simultaneously. Our enemies will invade. The Empire will die." "You speak of defeat as if it is certain," Corval snapped. "Are you a coward, Admiral?" "I am a realist. I look at what happened at Earth and I see a species that was willing to sacrifice everything to defend their home. I see tactics and weapons that caught our best war prince completely by surprise. I see a trap so carefully laid that 300 ships were destroyed in less than a day. And I ask myself, if they could do that with what they had, what else might they have prepared?" The argument continued for hours. Finally, the Emperor made his decision. "We will assemble the Grand Fleet, but we will not attack immediately. First, we send a diplomatic mission. We demand the return of our prisoners. We demand compensation for our losses. We test the humans, see how they respond. If they show weakness, if they are willing to negotiate, then perhaps we can resolve this without further bloodshed. And if they refuse?" Vexnor asked, "Then we will have no choice but to attack. But we will be prepared this time. We will not underestimate them again." 6 months after the battle, the Crethian Grand Fleet arrived at the edge of the Red Line. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valor, looking at the tactical display. 1,500 red dots marked the positions of enemy warships. It was the largest military force ever assembled against humanity. "Status of the Allied fleet?" Jack asked. Commander Sophie Grant pulled up the data. "We have ships from 37 systems standing with us, Admiral. Total count is 212 vessels. plus our 63 Earth Defense Force ships. 275 total against their 1,500. The odds were still against them, but they were better than before. Over the past 6 months, Earth had worked with the Allied systems to upgrade their ships, share defensive technology, and train their crews in human tactics. It was not enough to match the Creathian numbers, but it was something. All Allied ships report ready, Sophie continued. They are waiting for your orders. Jack opened the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Morrison to all ships. Today we face a larger enemy than before. The Creathians have brought their full military strength against us. They think overwhelming numbers will guarantee victory. They thought that last time too. We proved them wrong. Today we will prove them wrong again. He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were calm, professional, ready. We stand here not just for Earth, but for every world that believes in the right to self-defense. We stand for the principle that the strong do not have the right to prey on the weak. We stand for the line we drew and the promise we made. Do not cross this line with hostile intent. The Creathians ignored that warning once. They paid the price. Now they are back. Let us remind them why that was a mistake. Across the Allied fleet in ships of a dozen different designs, crews listened to the Admiral's words and prepared themselves for battle. On the bridge of the Covenant, a vessel from the Vrex Confederation, Captain Lyra stood beside her tactical officer. The Vrex had been neutral in the first battle, but they had chosen to stand with Earth this time. Do you think we can win? Her tactical officer asked quietly. Lyra thought about it. She had studied the recordings of the first battle extensively. She had attended training sessions with human officers. She had learned their tactics and their philosophy of warfare. The humans do not fight to win by superior numbers. They fight to make the cost of victory unacceptable to the enemy. If we can do that, we succeed even if we do not destroy every enemy ship. On the flagship of the Creathian Grand Fleet, Emperor Thrak himself sat on a mobile throne that had been brought aboard. He had decided to lead this attack personally. It was a risk, but he needed to show strength. The Empire needed to see their Emperor taking action. Fleet Admiral Vexnor stood beside the throne, reviewing tactical displays. Majesty, the human fleet is arrayed along their defensive line. They have been joined by vessels from multiple systems. Current count is 275 Allied ships. Still outnumbered, the Emperor said. More than 5-to-1 odds in our favor. Yes, Majesty, but I must remind you, they were outnumbered 6-to-1 in the first battle, and they destroyed our entire fleet. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. That is why we are not using the same tactics. We will not advance in a tight formation. We will not allow them to herd us into a kill box. Our fleet will spread out, attack from multiple angles, force them to divide their defensive fire. We will overwhelm them with simultaneous attacks from every direction. Vexnor nodded. It was a better plan than the last one. But he still felt uneasy. The humans had won the first battle not just through tactics, but through preparation and understanding their own system better than any invader could. What other surprises might they have waiting? The Emperor opened a communication channel to Earth. Humans, this is Emperor Thrak of the Creathian Empire. 6 months ago you destroyed a fleet that entered your system. You killed 200,000 of our warriors. You humiliated our empire before the galaxy. Today we return with overwhelming force. I offer you one chance to avoid total destruction. Surrender your planet. Disband your alliance. Submit to the Empire. Do this and your people will be allowed to live as subjects. Refuse and every human in the system dies. You have 1 hour to decide. The channel closed. On the Valor's bridge, Jack looked at his officers. Well, that was dramatic. Open a channel back to them. When the connection was made, Jack spoke calmly. Emperor Thrak, I am Admiral Jack Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. 6 months ago, we warned your fleet not to cross our red line. They ignored that warning. They crossed our boundary with hostile intent. We destroyed them. Now you return with more ships and make the same threat. Do you really think the outcome will be different? I have 1,500 ships, Admiral. You cannot possibly stop us all. You are probably right, Jack admitted. If you cross our line and attack, some of your ships will get through. You might even destroy Earth before we destroy your fleet. But Emperor, let me ask you something. Is Earth worth the price you will pay? Because I promise you, if your fleet crosses that line, it will suffer catastrophic losses. You might win, but your empire will be broken. Every world you have conquered will see your fleet destroyed and they will rebel. Your enemies will smell blood and attack. You will lose everything to gain one planet. Jack paused, then continued. Or you can turn back. You can claim you showed mercy to the misguided alliance. You can save face and preserve your strength. The choice is yours, but you need to make it carefully. Because unlike last time, we are not standing alone. 37 systems stand with us now. If you attack Earth, you attack all of them. And every small system in the galaxy will see that the bullies can be stopped. Is that really the future you want for your empire? The channel closed. On the Krethian flagship, the Emperor sat silent for a long moment. Admiral Vexnor spoke carefully. Majesty, the human admiral makes valid points. If we attack and suffer massive losses, the Empire's position becomes precarious. Are you suggesting we turn back? Again? Prince Corval stepped forward. Uncle, we cannot show weakness twice. The Empire will collapse if we retreat without fighting. The Empire will also collapse if we lose half our fleet, Vexnor countered. The humans are right about one thing. Our subject worlds are restless. Our enemies are watching. If we show vulnerability, we will face attacks on multiple fronts. The Emperor considered. He had built his reign on strength, on the image of invincibility. But he was also pragmatic. He understood that sometimes the appearance of strength was more important than actual military victory. Send probe ships forward, he ordered. Let them cross the line. Let us see how the humans respond. If they destroy the probe ships immediately, we know they are serious about their boundary. If they hesitate, we know they are bluffing. 3 small Krathian vessels moved forward, crossing the red line. On the Valor, alarms sounded immediately. Admiral, 3 enemy ships have crossed the boundary, Sophie reported. Classification? Jack asked. Probe ships. Unarmed scouts. They are not a military threat. Jack opened a channel to the probe ships. Krathian vessels, you have crossed into restricted space. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon. There was no response. The probe ships continued forward, their sensors active, scanning everything. They are testing us, Commander Greg Palmer said, seeing if we will actually fire on unarmed ships. Jack knew this moment was critical. If he let the probe ships pass, the Emperor would see it as weakness. But if he destroyed unarmed scouts, some members of the Alliance might question his judgment. He made his decision. Target the probe ships. Fire when ready. 3 missiles launched from the Valor. They crossed the distance in seconds and impacted the probe ships. The small vessels were destroyed instantly. On the Krathian flagship, the Emperor watched the brief battle on his displays. They did not hesitate, Vexnor observed. They destroyed our probe ships without warning. They gave warning, the Emperor corrected. They told the ships to turn back. The ships did not. The humans followed through on their threat. He sat back on his throne. What would happen if we sent a larger force? Say 100 ships. Could the humans stop them all? Probably not, Vexnor admitted. But they would destroy most of them, and the 100 ships that crossed would face the same fate as the first fleet once they entered the inner system. The humans have had 6 months to improve their defenses. Who knows what new weapons they have prepared? As they discussed, something unexpected happened. A new fleet arrived at the edge of the battle space. But these were not human ships or Krathian ships. They were vessels from the Sentinel Compact, the ancient civilization that prided itself on wisdom and neutrality. And they were not alone. Ships from the Confederation of Free Worlds appeared as well, then vessels from a dozen other neutral powers. None of them moved to join either side. They simply positioned themselves around the red line, watching, waiting. Their presence made a statement. The galaxy was paying attention. Whatever happened here would be witnessed by everyone. Ambassador Lisa Chen received a communication from the Sentinel Compact. Ambassador, we are not here to fight, but we are here to observe. The galaxy needs to know what happens when lines are drawn and challenged. We will bear witness.